What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Kirsten Potenza, CEO and founder of Pound, the Rockout Workout. You're listening to The Big Green Couch, where I sit down with noisemakers across various industries to discuss different topics, to bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, and practical tips to you, our community. Let's get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Big Green Couch. Today we have a super badass guest, Kiran Gandhi, also known by her stage name, Madame Gandhi. She is an American electronic music producer, a drummer, an artist, an activist whose mission is to celebrate gender liberation. Gandhi's music career includes being a touring drummer for artists M.I.A, Thievery Corporation, Kehlani, Lizzo, and most recently Oprah on her 2020 Vision Stadium tour with morning dance party Daybreaker. She holds a bachelor's degree from Georgetown University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. In 2015, Kiran ran the London Marathon, bleeding freely to combat period stigma around the world, sparking a global viral conversation about how we treat menstruation in various cultures. She has been listed as a Forbes 30 Under 30 member and is a 2020 TED Fellow. Her uplifting music and talks have been critically acclaimed by the New York Times, Billboard, NPR, and more. Welcome, Kiran, to the Big Green Couch. Kiran, you are the first professional musician that we've had on the Big Green Couch, which I'm really excited about. Cool. I know you know a little bit about Pound, but music is the backbone of what we do and why we do it. And drumming, yes, it inspires everything we do. And on a monthly basis, we're releasing new tracks and new movement. So music is big around here. So I'm going to focus most of the conversation around music and kind of the power that it has to change the world and the people that live in it. And I think there's like a smaller portion of the world that kind of views music as something that's more linear. Maybe they see it as background noise, or they listen to it when they go to work or cooking dinner. I don't know many people who view it that way, but I know those people do exist. But I really believe that music is anything but linear. And I've always believed that it is one of the most powerful tools that we have in this world. And I see that belief kind of woven throughout everything that you do, which is why it's so incredibly inspiring to watch you move through the industry as an activist, as an artist. I've seen you perform before. You just have such a raw and authentic nature to you. So I kind of wanted to go like all the way back, and it was something I was thinking about last night. I want to ask you if you can recall your earliest music memory, like the first time if you can think back and visualize your first experience with music.
Yeah, of course. There's a couple. I think maybe one of them is hearing my parents dance to Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye and like wanting me to come dance with them as a 3-year-old, but then like putting their hands over my ears when he would say Sexual Healing. And just the three of us dancing in the living room. That's definitely one memory. I think another memory is that my dad, on his way back from work, I used to always ask him to stop by the record store and like pick up the Tracy Chapman record or the Natalie Imbruglia record, because I would listen to Z100, which was the New York City like top 40 radio station, or Hot 97, the hip hop station, as a kid going to school on the school bus. So we had the coolest bus driver named Harrison. He would always like play classical music as we would pick up the kids in front of the parents. And then as soon as we would drive away, he would turn it back to like the hip hop station or top 40 station. So I used to memorize all the lyrics to Nas, to Lauryn Hill, to En Vogue, to the Spice Girls, to all the stuff that was charting in the 90s when I was literally a kindergartner. And so then I would learn the music and then ask my dad in particular to stop by the record store and pick up CDs, and then we would play them. And I used to always think it was so frustrating that like you'd buy an entire CD that has like 20 songs on it, but we only knew one song from the radio. Like I remember like as a kid understanding how gimmicky I thought that was. I was like, it's so annoying because I don't like any of the other songs. And then I think a third memory that I would share is driving to, I think like just my family was like a member of like a kind of sports club type thing outside the city where my dad would play golf, my mom would play tennis, and they had friends there. And I actually used to hate going, but the only reason why I wouldn't mind it is that the drive was like an hour and a half. So we would listen to music. Do you know what I mean? Like that was the only reason
Hmm.
why I was down to even go on this drive and not throw a fit as a kid, was because I knew like that hour there and that hour and a half back, whatever it was, we would listen to the radio. So those are some of my earliest memories growing up in New York City as like a 4 or 5 year old, and listening to music.
It's so awesome and interesting just hearing you explain that, and how even at an early age that your experience with music influenced your early understanding of yourself, almost like
Yes.
the rebelliousness.
Yeah.
And um I, I had I remember when I would get a CD, I'd listen to it and I'd follow the lyrics. You know how they used to be written in the CD. Um, I was so into lyrics for some reason, and I also, my family was like super Catholic. My mom
Mhm.
was a little strict, but do you remember the very special Christmas CDs? It was like a
Oh,
compilation.
awesome, awesome.
They were so good, and that was my first. I think it was a Run DMC song. I was like sitting in front of the stereo. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about it that way. But and my dad like blasting Bob Marley, and my mom getting all mad at him. But it's cool to think that far back. Um, at what I mean, you kind of just explained it a bit, but at what point in your early life did you realize that you wanted music to be a larger part of who you were? And was there something about drumming or percussion that made it click, or did that kind of evolve over time?
Because I was raised by two very, academically minded Indian parents, I think I never thought music was accessible to me as an actual career. I think for the first half of my life, I just it didn't even occur to me that I could participate as a musician, that I would always be a fan of music. That like my cool factor was that I could tell you the lyrics or like the artist, or I could make you a mix CD, or I could curate the night's playlist. Like that was always my role. I didn't realize that I could be the musician herself, even though as a kid I was always dancing and choreographing dances for the school talent show, even though I took piano lessons, for 4 or 5 years. Because I was raised like in going to super, traditionally academic institutions, it just never occurred to me. It was only until I started playing the drums and I was really good at it, and like I felt really seen by other people, and other people who I admired, other well-known musicians that I started to get to sit in with, as a 15 or 16-year-old in New York City. It was only then that I started being like, yo, like I want to be the musician. I want to be the
Mm-hmm.
one, touring. I want to be the one living this life. Like this is all I know.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, we grew up here in Manhattan, so I used to like recruit my little sister to come with me on all my like shenanigans. We used to sneak into Central Park Summer Stage, and then I would just tell the bouncer like, "Oh yeah, yeah, no, I'm the daughter of Damian Marley. Like we got to get backstage." And then they would let us backstage, and I'd be like, "Damien, we love you. Can you sign my shirt?" Boom, boom, boom. He would sign it. I'm a drummer. This is my little sister, Kanika. Can we get a picture? Boom, boom, boom. And then we'd be out. Like I just like learned how to flow with the backstage culture, and watching people load in and load out, and like watching what credentials people had and how press worked and what managers were doing. Like I just loved observing the whole thing. I wanted to be fully immersed in it. And I felt very comfortable in those spaces. I felt very comfortable with other musicians. So I would say it was when I started playing drums and started feeling really accepted as a young person by people who I was fans of my whole life.
It sounds like you were a natural. What was I'm trying to remember the first. I think the first time I played the drums is because this boy that I had a crush on played the drums, and I was like,
Mm.
something in me wasn't like, oh, I like him. It was like, oh, I want to be like him.
Yes. I have
um,
confusion with a lot of my crushes. I'm like, I can't tell if that I wanna be with you or you just really inspire me. Totally.
There was a lot, like, he wore sambas. I was like, I'm gonna wear sambas. But what was like the first experience with drumming? Was it How did you get into it? How did you try it for the first time?
I was at a summer camp in Maine, and I you're supposed to like take lake activities in the afternoon. Like the entire camp is required to choose like swimming or canoeing or whatever. And I just like as a New York City brat was like not pressed to get into the lake. I was like, what? Like absolutely not. Like I don't want to go into that lake. It's cold. It's not comfortable. I smell bad. You smell bad afterwards. Like I just didn't want to do that for some reason. Obviously now I'm like, you're a fool. That was such a dreamy childhood. But I snuck away to the theater cabin because I was kind of like, okay, no one's gonna find me here, I'll just kind of like do my own thing. And there was a drum set in the corner, so I just kind of like started messing around with it. And I didn't realize, but a maintenance man was also in the theater cabin working on something. And when I noticed that he was there, I thought he was gonna like turn me in, and be like, you need to go back to the lake. But instead, he was like, I know how to play the drums. I'll show you. And so day by day, he started showing me, and the camp was actually really okay with it because he didn't mind teaching me, and I was being supervised, as a kid. So it was this like dreamy summer where every day the rest of the camp would be on the lake, and for whatever reason, they just gave me this pass to spend the afternoon learning drumming every day with this counselor.
That's incredible. I always think back about, I feel like there's like these angel people put in your life that maybe they're there for like a summer camp, maybe they're there for a couple of years, but what would have happened if he didn't,
Mm.
um, get you, call you out instead of actually step up and help you learn? I think that's amazing. Can you, my understanding, and excuse me if this is wrong, but when you were young, your earlier childhood, you were back and forth between NYC and India, or mostly
I lived
NYC?
in India between 97 and 2000. So I lived in Mumbai properly when I was 8, 9, and 10 years old. And then,
Okay.
and that's really when I was just like choreographing dances, learning piano, but more of just a fan of music. And it even continued to went into sixth, seventh, eighth grade when I was living in New York City. I was the kid who had a, MP3 before anybody else, like a mini disc player or a make CDs for people and had LimeWire. And that was really my relationship to music. It was only until I was 16 or so and like really started taking drumming seriously. But yeah, we would live in India. I lived in India those 3 years. And besides that, we would like obviously visit family around the holidays and stuff like that.
What was that like for you when I the day before my freshman year, I moved from the tiniest little town in upstate New York to San
Mm,
Francisco,
mm,
and culturally, um, it was just so eye-opening. I My life would be completely different if I hadn't kind of experienced that world, and I'm so grateful for that. But New York City and India are two of, like, if I had to pinpoint the most, energetic and culturally vibrant places, I'd probably pick those two.
mm.
What was that like for you? And maybe it's more like in retrospect, but as a kid to experience both of those kind of environments.
With New York City and India, I mean, I loved living in both. In fact, after 3 years, we're already up in Mumbai. I didn't want to leave. I loved being in Mumbai. I understood that I was different. Like, I felt like as a kid, I kind of got the benefit of like not having to feel like I had to adhere to Indian rules. Like, as a young girl, I just felt different. And then I felt different in the States too. And I actually found, even though in times it could feel isolating, I found it to be enormously like fun and beneficial. And I just felt free. I think since childhood, my most I think that's most important to me to this day is just feeling free. And even as my project builds, as we start working with a label, these are the different things that like I think about a lot is like how do I maintain a sense of freedom while, having the benefit of expanding and having more people
Mm.
support the project. So yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm just a city person through and through. I'm lucky that we grew up in New York City because I would be out on the subway at 14. We had our first fake ID at 16. We were like, I was partying, but I was using my ID to get into music to watch bands. Like if to watch live music in New York, 9 out of 10 times it's in a place that's a bar that's 21 plus. So if I want to see the local salsa band or the local reggae band or this cool band that I read about on some blog or whatever, I would need an ID to get in, even if I wasn't pressed to drink. And I really did understand that as a young person, and we had access, and I had parents who trusted me, and I valued that trust so much that I rarely kind of messed it up. Like it was just about this hunger to get out and see what music life is all about. And I think, India was a little bit more sheltered, obviously, because you have to be that way. It's a really different situation. There's
Mm-hmm.
less freedom, but the more you grow up, as you say, exposed to different things, the more it builds your heart chakra, your empathy, your ability to, connect with different types of people, to understand their walk of
Yeah.
life. And I think that's definitely influenced my music. And we just got. I mean, in February I spent the entire month shooting in Mumbai, to make the music video for my song "Waiting for Me," which has been the best video that I've ever put out. You all must watch it. And it
So
really
good.
drew from that time. Thank you. It drew from that time being a schoolgirl in India, and then celebrating freedom and what freedom in Indian femininity looks and feels like, for me and for the folks who I surround myself with. So I think if I hadn't had that experience in India, I wouldn't have been able to just confidently like pull up in a country like India and be able to execute a project of that magnitude.
If any of our listeners or community have not seen that music video, it's beautiful, um, so visually pleasing and lyrically pleasing, and definitely take a moment to watch and listen if you haven't already. Um,
It's called Waiting for Me.
what would you personally consider your first kind of professional break in the music industry being?
I think it was the first time I started sitting in with Thievery Corporation. I was a student at Georgetown University in DC. I was studying math. I was studying politics. I was studying women's studies. I never really fit in. Georgetown is super broy, and I was almost like aghast, like how co-ed education like looks and feels like, because I had always gone to all girls schools my whole life. And that was definitely a culture shock to me. But in the same
Same.
way, I didn't really fully fit in with like growing up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And so I just spent the rest of my time out in the city. I ended up taking a similar strategy in DC, where I would just spend majority of my time off campus in different bars and restaurants and meeting local percussionists, meeting local bands, sitting in with them on congas, subbing in for the drummer if they couldn't make it, et cetera, et cetera. And so eventually I got this gig sitting in on congas with a band called CI, who happened to be the touring band for a very famous DJ duo called Thievery Corporation. And
Mm,
Thievery Corporation's big break was when their song was in Garden State almost 20 years ago. And
such a
so
good soundtrack.
yeah, it's such a good soundtrack, and their music is obviously incredible. And so one time the percussionist couldn't make it, and so I got asked to sub in at Bonnaroo, which is one of the biggest music festivals in the world, out of Nashville. And that was 2010. I was 21 years old, and it was my rising senior year in college. And when I sat in on that stage and was playing drums at this like super professional level, even though I was just sitting in for one opportunity, that changed my whole life. I was like, why am I fighting this? This is when I feel
Yeah.
happy. This is when I feel comfortable. This is when I feel seen. This is when I feel community. This is when I feel valued. All this bougie stuff that my immigrant parents have so beautifully been able to give to my brother and sister and I are cultures and communities that I don't connect with, nor do I
Mm.
respect. I don't want to wear Ralph Lauren. I don't want to wear fucking Vines. I don't want to, go to country clubs. I don't want to learn how to play golf. Like these are things that I was seeing here on the Upper East Side and seeing at Georgetown. And it's so interesting because, when you have immigrant parents who have worked their ass off to provide this super like luxurious life for me and my brother and sister, you would think that we would step into it, but we all stepped into it in a really different way, which is to say, wow, what a blessing that we were raised with this. And how do we take all of this and do something that we think will give impact, and make a difference in the world? And how do we use our passion, because we have the luxury of doing so, to create change? And which is in my case, gender, that's my biggest passion. But that
Yeah.
was really the turning point, playing drums for Thievery Corporation and wanting to become a full-time musician after that.
Sounds like your parent, there was a lot of freedom and trust within your family, which is really beautiful to hear. I want to go back to something that kind of struck me, and just simply ask you. I also went to an all girls school in high school, and I look back at it, and as much as I think through the experience I didn't appreciate it, I would not be the human being that I am today without that lived experience, because without the presence of men, every person in that school had the ability to be, the class clown, the athlete, speak up in class, be silly. I remember wearing like toilet paper bows in my hair one day. Like it, it, there wasn't that pressure. And I'm wondering if you feel the same way about your experiences in all girls schools, because as much as I think I like didn't appreciate it during, when I look back, I quite literally wouldn't change a thing about it.
Yep, you hit the nail on the head. I couldn't say it any better myself. That's exactly what it was. It was the freedom to be able to be who you want without the kind of testosterone energy that boys and men do bring to the table, where they tend to be the louder voices in the room. And so I think we
Mm-hmm.
as women tend to be quieter. And also, it was a very nurturing environment. I think that made a big difference for me, being someone who is very sensitive and emotional. I loved being nurtured and seen by my teachers. My first crushes were on different teachers. I would make them little gifts and things like that. Like, it was such a warm environment. And my time at Chapin, which is where I went to school for most of my life in New York City, were truly my happiest memories, because I felt really loved and really seen. I think my only criticism is around, yeah, structure, having to, and not that I like discipline. I just think that a lot of it was very waspy, Upper East Side, Manhattan, like very little diversity,
Yeah.
and even 10, 15, 20 years ago, like, it was not, those conversations were just not being had to the degree that obviously I think we should all be teaching kids. And there was no
Mm-hmm.
conversation around like gender identity or sexual orientation, like maybe a little bit here or there, but it felt awkward. It didn't feel sincere. It didn't feel like, oh, their pronouns are they, them, or this person is transitioning or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I see youth now, and like at 12, they know their gender identity, and like it's like so cool. So yeah, I think my is more about privilege rather than the all girls education, and I wholeheartedly agree with you that my all girls education absolutely showed me what was possible as a young woman, and what it looks like for us to step into our power when we're given the chance.
I couldn't be more excited to bring a kid into this world, and I think you're really right. It's cool to see the immense growth that's happened since we were in um, high school and college. And which brings me to my next question. In your recent song, "Waiting for Me," your opening line is, "We always assume our own powerlessness, but never our own power." You currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, identify as a female, but with less than, I believe, 2% of the music industry's producers identifying as women. Can you tell me what more about your experience, or your feminine experience within the music industry, and share what sparked your fight for gender liberation?
Yeah, I think just from a young age, in the same way I was describing to you how obsessed I was with music, simultaneously, I was very aware that the way women were represented in music videos was always over sexualized, was always related to male fantasy, was always cheesy in a way. And I think it was because I had this really beautiful all girls education where I was seeing, as you mentioned, the potential of women, the diversity of women, the multidimensionality of women and girls. And then you watch mainstream pop culture and it's so reductive. Everything is about sex and everything is about, I was going to say emotions, and not that that's a bad thing, but like more like a construct of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
like not like rich, deep, nuanced, like complex emotions, more like kind of basic love songs that are like archetypical of what we think of women in the media. And so I found those problematic. And that's why my work has been in showcasing the multidimensionality of a feminine experience, regardless of your gender identity. And it actually means the most to me when the men come up to me and be like, yes, like, I had a lot of feminine traits growing up, but they were beaten out of me, even though they
Mm-hmm.
actually really served me. My own intuition, my own gentleness, my own ability to prioritize peacekeeping over conflict, my ability to put ego to the side and actually figure out what was going on with myself and my toxic behavior and somebody else's toxic behavior. These are things that I do, whether, for better or for worse, do kind of imagine more in the feminine side of the spectrum. And like I said, my work is not about saying women over men or men over women, because I think the liberation right now is folks designing their own gender identity that feels most authentic for themselves. It's more about saying, in the society that I think we live in right now, we're so obsessed with the masculine. We're so obsessed with saying, "Don't be such a pussy, man up, toughen up." These kinds of notions are reified in culture and in politics and in the styles of leadership we have. And instead, I wish we lived in a world that was more emotionally intelligent, that was more introspective, that was more, peacekeeping,
Mm.
um, that was more sensitive and more tender. All of these things that I do think live more in the feminine side. So that's really where my mission and my work lies, and that's why I wrote that line. We always assume our own powerlessness, but rarely our own power. It's just about us being brave enough to realize that each of our choices every day can be radical, and how do we step into that?
That's beautiful. I don't have a better word to respond with. I think with I think with music, with mainstream music rather, what we hear, what we're being fed, what we listen to is predominantly created by or controlled by men. The messaging, the visuals, the lyrics. What do we do as oppressed groups of people to take kind of the power back? If you look at the world we live in today, like we have to put our money where our mouths are, where our core values are. With music, what do you do, or what advice would you give to kind of start shifting those things in mainstream music?
I think the biggest thing is for us to start investing in our own skill sets. Like, I'm really obsessed with that. I think like learning how to play the drums allowed me to have a literal seat at the table, or a little seat in the band, instead of me having to be the girlfriend of a band member or the manager of a band. I got to be in the band, and that was
Hmm.
because I learned how to drum, and I learned how to participate. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I learned how to DJ. And so now, I come in and I DJ and I play drums at the same time while I DJ. So it's not that you're booking me. Obviously, in some cases they do this, but it's not that you're only booking me because I'm a woman and now you're trying to offset a diversity check mark. It's now you're booking me because the set that I have is unlike any other set you've seen, because I'm playing drums and DJing at the same time, which is not an offering that a lot of folks have. So the more we invest in our own skill sets, the more we're able to just provide value and bring something different to the table, regardless of our gender identity. And then because we're showing up as women, that's what makes the change happen. It's like, oh man, not only is this set really dope, but she's a woman, and I rarely see women DJs, I rarely see women producers, I rarely see women drummers, and it totally works, and it's its own different thing. And that's another big part of my work. I'm not interested in us aspiring to masculine standards of behavior. I see a lot of really talented women drummers, and they do a lot of the same things that the top male drummers are doing. And of course, I can't even say much because I can't do half the stuff that I see other folks do online. They have like 30 cymbals and like 40 drums and like playing to metal music and all this shit that like I don't know how to play to. And that's cool, and I do think we need that. But I'm way more inspired by and interested in folks who take the skill set and do something we never seen before, and do something
Hmm.
that forges a new lane. And so I intentionally try to do that in my DJ sets. Like, for example, I love taking my audience around the world. I love taking my audience in and out of different kinds of beats and rhythms that then I accentuate on actual percussion in the DJ set. I love being able to curate a DJ set end to end that does not contain any sexist lyrics or any sexist like notions. It's very sex positive, if anything. And it doesn't mean that I'm not playing male artists. It means that I'm intentionally choosing male artists whose lyrics don't contribute to the oppression of other people, and leading by that example, by showing how dope it can be to turn up to really joyful music without having to participate in the normalized misogyny that exists in our culture and in the fitness community today. So that's one thing I was going to say. And then regarding the fact that there's only 2% women producers and what can we do about that? Like I said, 5 years ago, I started learning how to produce. And it's not my main bread and butter, but at the very least, I can make my songs end to end and then take it to different folks who are farther along in their producer journey than I am, but have a lot more say at the table, instead of it feeling like the sounds and the direction is completely controlled by them, because I haven't done the work on my side to learn the vocabulary and learn the technical skill sets that require me to be able to participate.
You know what I think you also do really beautifully is you educate through your work,
Mhm.
which is even like I've watched some of your lives, like you always speak to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think in this day and age, especially when things are different and innovative, having somebody go, "Oh, that's what's happening right now. I'm experiencing it in a different way and I'm learning X, Y, and Z." I think that's so important. And yeah, for whether it's women or people who have a harder time entering into certain industries, like being educated, having the skill set, being able to show up and say, "No, I can do that. I can step in." I think that's really powerful. Kind of brings me to my next point. I read I think it was a Wired article. You went to Harvard Business School, and I think you stated you think you're going to go there to learn how to make a lot of money, but the most important thing you learned is to be brave enough to tell the truth. And that really struck me because it's something that's kind of I've been thinking about constantly through the last 8 months. It's this feeling of having to, whether no matter what industry you're in, kind of quote unquote stay in your lane. As an owner of a fitness company, I've been told too many times, keep it fitness. Don't venture off too far. But I kind of think that's bullshit. And um, I really view every industry, every role as a service role. And like, yes, how do we make a business flourish financially so we can keep it alive? But more importantly, how can we be of service to the communities that we've worked so hard to build? We have a community that lives around the world. And if we're not serving them, are we really doing our jobs? And if that sometimes lives outside of the realm of music or fitness, is that such a bad thing? So, my question to you is how do you or have you in such a large industry, the music industry, put your community first and make grassroots activism a priority? Because I imagine there's a lot of pressure from a lot of different um, places and people.
I love this question. I think our choices become our reputation and become our truth. These micro decisions that we make every day is what's real. I try my best to be honest with my social media following, whatever is my truth. I'm the kind of person who like starts my day off having like a green smoothie and like a black coffee and like water and like everything and like meditation. And then by the time the nighttime comes around, I'm like, yeah, I'm in New York. I would love to have eggplant parmesan and like delicious whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Like it's such a I try my best to be honest, which is like I whenever in my choices I can genuinely adhere to like the healthiest possible lifestyle I can while still also being so hype on the different aspects of life that are available to us. And yeah, I think honesty is the key thing. You hit the nail on the head. And it's funny because I wasn't whatever the Wired article says, I think I just want to contextualize that because I think the point that I'm making is more that you think that that's what business school is going to teach you is like how to make a
Yeah.
bunch of money. And it's like
Yep.
I wasn't even interested in that. Like I was going more because I thought if I have a business degree from this prestigious university, I can get um, a job in a more influential position in the music industry at a Spotify or at a YouTube or at another label and be responsible for signing and directing more feminist and feminine powered bands. And that was really my intention. But yeah, you get to a place like business school and it's like they already know that by you having the Harvard name, you're going to get a bougie job afterwards. So like it didn't even feel like they were spending that much time on like teaching you money stuff. It felt like
Yeah.
I was really impressed by how they taught us a lot of things related to crafting an argument, stating your point, reading the body language of the team you're managing, being self aware as a leader, questioning what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are.
Your
And
emotional intelligence
yeah,
within
emotional
business. Yeah.
intelligence. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's because they had a lot of like douchey people graduate from Harvard and like people who commit like white collar crimes and who are now in prison for like doing shady business things. And so of course they're like, okay, we can't like only accept narcissistic people to our program. Like, we need to have like some self-awareness and make sure that we're actually, producing leaders and not just like greedy business people. That's my take on it. So yeah, to your question about how do we foster like a community and more grassroots and tell the truth, I think social media doesn't actually encourage telling the truth. It actually rewards you for having a bit of like a herd mentality. It rewards you for looking pretty. It rewards you for looking fit. It rewards you for flexing on your different accolades. But I try my best, I really do, to provide knowledge and love energy and kindness and honesty, um, because then you at least set an example and you're part of the change, instead of just reaffirming the things that are problematic. And by the way, I wanted to tell you that when PoundFit started so many years ago, like the amount of people that sent me articles about your company, everyone was so hype. And I remember being like, I can't wait to do something with them. So this is very like full circle.
Well, we have a lot of mutual friends. I actually think because you worked at Interscope for a while. I think. Do you know Alexa Dedlow?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Alexa, Elmo, Jack. I think we have a lot more mutual friends than we might
Cool.
know. Yeah, Elmo is one of the reasons why Pound. He essentially was like, "What if working out? Well, you could like team that up with drumming." And that was
Mhm.
Elmo.
Wow.
So lots of friends that we probably share, and honestly, I'm so happy to hear that about business school. It was never
No, I'm giving it way more credit than it deserves. I'm just saying those I focused on. I would say business school is like the breeding ground of the capitalist patriarchy. So not get it twisted. I just like really did my best to kind of protect my own energy when I was there because
Yeah.
honestly, it's just like a lot of like really problematic broy energy, and I think there's a lot of value to the education and a lot of brilliant people who go there, but I had to really curate my experience so that I walked out being a better version of myself, rather than anything else.
I mean, I think you just explained the best way to move through life. There's so much bullshit, but you truly can take the good and leave the bad, and help move the world forward because of it. And I think I was a social major. We learned all of the same things. Business school is never something that I even thought of as an option, but it is at least nice to hear that there's some emotional intelligent pieces being taught within it.
Yeah, and I want to say about
um,
your company too, when you describe this experience of like someone telling you, keep it to fitness, focus on your core
yeah.
offering, focus on your bread and butter. I think there's two things with that. I think one is people say that to folks who are like a bit hesitant, or B just trying to create an arbitrary new offering. Like they don't genuinely believe in the thing. They're just kind of like, how do I differentiate this? Okay, what if we fucking started drumming? It's like
Yep.
it,
Yeah.
I think in that sense, that's why we would give someone that, like someone might give somebody else that advice, like, hey, focus on the core product. Like you don't need to
Hmm.
do that. I think it's for someone like you, or in general, when we like full on believe and see the potential of a specific idea, I think you got to go for it, and there can't be a plan B. Like you can't operate with a plan B. It's got to be like, I'm going to make this one thing work. And I only share that because that's worked for me in my life. Like anytime I had a plan B, guess what happened? Plan B. You know what I mean? Like it's never
Yeah, it's very true.
yeah, like if we like full on say, no, I'm gonna do this Madame Gandhi thing. I'm gonna make bad albums on my way to making good albums, and there's no other option. This is
Yep.
what's happening. Then that's what happens. If you're like, oh yeah, plan B, if music doesn't work out in a year, I'm gonna go get a job at YouTube or Spotify. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna end up back at a fucking corporate job again, right?
Yeah.
You have to fully give your whole manifestation energy to the thing. I really believe that.
Yeah. You're open. It's like, it's a silly visual, but you're energetically like opening up two roads where like the weakness of that energy splits into
Mhm,
into two. And I
mhm,
think what you've done so well, the honesty, the I hate using the word authentic because I feel like it's so overused, but it's felt. And within our community, it's like, we're not going to be afraid to be rebellious. We're not going to be afraid to talk about our core values, to stand up for what's right. And when you consistently do that, you have a community that when you go through something like what we've gone through in the last 8 months, and you watch them and you're never let down. Like, it's been the craziest thing to me as Pound has grown, just watching our community and being like, oh my God, you guys are all the most badass, like, kindest, most loving, accepting people. And where did you come from? And this is amazing. And I think if you stay true to those things and you're not afraid to kind of stand up when at all times or when you need to, hopefully that's what comes out of it. So, speaking of the last couple of months, I think I'm going to look back at this year and just think it's just, I really do think it's been a really incredible year. But
Mhm.
you said recently that drums kind of serve as this unifying heartbeat in peaceful protest, and that it's the drummers that you hear give energy to protesters. That's been that way for very, very, very long time. Um, we just we're about to release a course on the history of percussion for our instructors, and just hearing how it has truly brought people and communities together from the beginning of time is such a powerful thing. How do you think drumming and rhythm will help unify us and move us forward as a human race?
Yeah, I mean, the question is self-answered. Anytime I show up to the protest, it's me with drums, and then I find other drummers, or it's almost fun. Like when people are protesting and saying things in unison, I echo the cadence of the chant on the percussion. Or sometimes I jam as if the percussion is like a backbeat supporting the main chant, and people love it. It gives people energy, or they feel like we're all kind of singing and dancing together. So I think that's it. And I think the best part about doing something from when you're a kid is that you're good at it. Like I'm very effortless when I play the drums, uh, and I'm very not effortless when I play the piano or when I like am doing other things. And yeah, I think people love watching someone express themselves really effortlessly through an instrument. And I love having that relationship to drums because rhythm is fluid, rhythm is effortless, rhythm is just yeah, an expression from the heart into the world, and it's loud. And I'm also not very much loud or aggressive person. You can hear me get passionate on this podcast, but that's kind of the extent of it. I tend to be a little bit more soft and value softness. And so having drums has always been really important to me as this extension of that expression.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we our bodies are our instruments.
Yes,
When we walk down the street, we're creating a beat.
love that.
We move together, and I think that's one of my bigger concerns at the beginning of Pound was like, oh my God, like, will everybody be able to sync up to the same movement and the same beat in class? And we structured it really in a very simple way, but watching people connect with beat, which really equates to them connecting with themselves and their own bodies and their own self-expression, it's such a, I don't know, it's just such a cool and powerful thing. And I think as we have seen over the course of history, been used to bring people together, which is why we love drumming, right? um I know that I'll just name a few. You work with a ton of organizations. Give a Beat, which works with incarcerated youth, to Girls Who Code. How I'm asking this question because I think in this time, with the world kind of swirling around us and everybody hopefully really wanting to play a part in changing the way that things are and the larger issues that we have experienced for hundreds of years really needing to be changed. How did you personally find the right organizations and spaces to dedicate your time to? And what advice would you give to our audience for finding their own. I think in general, humans feel this need. If you're at all empathetic, I want to help. But I think what we don't realize is that we can get helpful at a micro level with something that speaks to us. So I'd love to hear your advice on how you found these organizations and what our community might do to find, their sweet spots for giving back.
I think I feel very fluid with it. I feel like if I want to keep, if it's something that like sounds exciting and I want to keep doing it, that's how I know it's an organization that I want to align with. Give a Beat teaches beat making and DJing to incarcerated people. And specifically, I teach DJing and beat making twice a month to incarcerated youth. Sometimes I get the boys, sometimes I get the girls. And it's it's so healing for both of us. It's healing for them, even though they're resistant to it in the beginning, and it's healing for me because I know what music can do. The second I start playing some of the songs that they know, the whole vibe of the room changes,
Hmm.
and it's fun, and it's also fun because I get to be a big sister, and be like, okay, why do you think this person uses sexist lyrics in his song? Okay, and then they get it, and they're like, okay, miss, what about Cardi B? Like, is that okay? Well, let's analyze it. Let's listen. Do we think this is okay, or do we think this contributes to the oppression of women? And we like have these real conversations because they're kids, and kids are still open no matter what hardships they've been through, and if they see that we respect them and we see their own potential as kids, they rise to that instead of feeling cast aside like the prison system so evilly
Hmm.
does.
Yeah.
And I think in general, we were raised with a sense of having to give back, having to be conscious about the world, having to understand what's happening in the rest of the world. I can always do better about it, but I don't ever want to be crippled by how overwhelmed I am by what happens in the world. I want to always be doing something, and so Give a Beat felt like a great partnership because it's musical, it's related to either girls or young boys, and young boys are just as much part of my mission as young girls are, and all genders in between.
Hmm.
Um, and the Central Juvenile Hall is 8 minutes from my house in downtown LA. So it's like also about being in karmic balance with your own
Yeah.
community. Like
Yeah.
we can easily say, Kiran, there's so much work to be done in India. There's so much work to be done in
Hmm.
these different parts of the world. And it's like, yeah, okay. And that's why I went and made a music video in India so that I do get to speak to my culture to the extent that I feel connected with it. But I feel way more connected to my life in LA because that's where I live. And so Give a Beat felt authentic and honest, and it also felt like something that I always have energy for. And then also, even though we couldn't go into the prison system during the quarantine, we did a big campaign and we sold masks to raise money for Give a Beat and raised, a couple $1,000s that I was able to contribute instead of me contributing my own body and time. So I think that's the way I analyze it. Like, does it sound like something you'll have gas for? Because then it's a good partnership. And people who are on the other side of charity don't want to fucking feel like you're doing them the favor. Like, people are people, no matter what their condition is. They don't want to feel like you're showing up as the martyr. They want to feel like you're having a good time and they're having a good time, like two people.
I feel like what I would take from that, first of all, both those organizations are incredible, and I think you made a really beautiful point, though. Whether no matter who you are, I think if we begin to target our local communities first, it truly does send a ripple effect. It's our backyard. It's what we're most, energetically in tune with. I think that's a really good piece of advice. And I know that a lot of our instructors are essentially leaders within their community. And one of the things I never fully understood about group fitness and didn't appreciate before Pound was that this is hopefully, if done right, a safe space for people to go enter into to be supported. And usually, an instructor is at the forefront of that, again, if they're doing it right. And there's such a large impact. So I think just teaching in general, and then finding those um, outlets and places to give back is always really important. We Pound for purpose is something that's deeply embedded in everything that we do. uh Last question for you. What would your childhood self have to say about your latest releases?
Oh, I've actually thought about this because this video is for my childhood self. You know, I was always the
Yeah.
kid on this music video Waiting for Me that I put out about a month ago. And again, I hope the folks listening to the podcast, please go and watch Waiting for Me by Madame Gandhi on YouTube. And in that music video, you see 10 girls and gender nonconforming folks transform from being in super rigid schoolgirl uniforms, marching up and down, consuming garbage, popping pills, you know, watching television mindlessly, kind of doing things that all of us are doing on a daily basis, you know, in our day-to-day lives, and then rejecting that and then moving into creative, colorful self-expression where each person is very much in the tribe, but looking like themselves, you know, and repping the tribe colors or the squad colors in their own unique self-expression. And some people are wearing my merch that I sell online, madamegandhi.com, and some people are wearing their own saris, and other people are wearing skirts, other people are wearing pants, you know, whatever. And that is for my childhood self, because I always was the kid who was not wearing the uniform or like tried to dodge the rules by making little exceptions or saying, oh yeah, no, this is not purple, this is actually blue, so it's in the uniform. And they'd be like, no, it's purple. And I'd be like, no, it's blue. You know, little things like that. I would always try to just allow my own self-expression to come through. So I'd like to think that my 8-year-old self, who was super cute and super free, would be like, this music video is awesome. And I can't believe you're making music videos. That's so cool and so us. And she and I would like probably high five each other and be like, cool.
Oh my God,
And
I love it.
she'd be like, can I be in your next music video? And I would be like, yeah, you definitely should.
I love it. I think it's from AA, but the concept of walking around with a picture of you as a child in your wallet or purse or back pocket, whatever you carry, and making sure that all of your decisions honor who that person was and is. I think it's so cool to hear you say that. I love that answer. And I think with the song and the video, it's like perfect. So you mentioned YouTube, you mentioned your site. Where else can our community find you, follow you, and join along?
Yeah, thank you all so much. I think the best place for me is Instagram. It's at Madame Gandhi. And in about a month, on August 21st, I don't know when we're airing this, but August 21st, I had all my really talented producer friends, who all happen to be women, each pick a song on my album and remix it. So we're going to be dropping the remixes, 2 visions, each song remixed by a really talented female producer. And that's August 21st. And we specifically did those so that we could allow the music to live in more fitness contexts, in more dance contexts. They're super like high, pumpy, like,
Cool.
you know, Afrobeat remixes, Moombahton remixes, dance remixes, techno remixes, you know, just stuff that has a lot more energy to it and a more modern feel, so that you all can enjoy that.
I'm stoked to hear that. And thank you so much for giving your time to us today and our community, and your incredible answers. And just thank you in general for everything that you do and stand for and fight for.
Likewise, Kirsten, and I can't wait to get started. I've been wanting to take one of these classes for like years now. This is very synergistic, and I adore you. I'm so proud of you, and keep going.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Big Green Couch. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on either iTunes or Spotify, and to follow us on Instagram at The Big Green Couch.